As Pakistan continues its suppression of dissent and human rights in Pakistan-occupied Jammu and Kashmir and Gilgit-Baltistan, voices of resistance are growing stronger, calling for global intervention. The ongoing 57th session of the Human Rights Council brought attention to the grim situation in these regions, where activists are harassed, detained and silenced for speaking up. Here's a detailed report.
Pakistan is facing criticism for its dire human rights track record. Decades of reports have detailed numerous violations in the Pakistan-occupied territories, including political repression, forced disappearances, torture, and restrictions on freedom of expression. International human rights organizations and advocacy groups have extensively documented these infringements in PoJK and Gilgit-Baltistan. Recently, during the Human Rights Council session, Sajid Hussain, Secretary of Information for the United Kashmir People's National Party, condemned the deteriorating human rights conditions in PoJK and POGB. Hussain highlighted a range of severe violations, including the excessive use of force, arbitrary detentions, and the suppression of freedom of speech and expression. The situation has worsened, particularly in Rawalakot, where radical Islamic forces are gaining influence, issuing fatwas against activists and anyone challenging the oppressive regime. These religious decrees, often sanctioned by pro-government clerics, have become tools of persecution, leaving activists and human rights defenders vulnerable to threats, harassment, and even physical violence.
Honorable President, our organization urged the United Nations to prioritize the follow-up on the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights reports from 2018 and 19, which addressed grave human rights violations and forcibly divided the former princely state of Jammu and Kashmir, particularly in Azad Jammu and Kashmir and Gilgit-Baltistan. These reports brought light to critical issues such as excessive use of force, arbitrary detention, and severe restriction on freedom of expression and association. There is deteriorating situation in Rawalakot, Pakistani administered Kashmir, where Islamic radical forces are exerting pressure and issuing fatwas against activists involved in rights movements.
One glaring example is the case of Asma Batul, a young human rights defender who was arrested and charged with blasphemy for sharing a poem on social media. Her actions attracted the wrath of extremist elements, endangering her life. Similarly, another activist, Arsalan from Arja Bagh, faced arbitrary detention for his outspoken criticism of the administration. Both were subjected to solitary confinement for over 10 days, and their families have been repeatedly harassed and intimidated by local authorities. Freedom of expression in Pakistan-occupied Kashmir is virtually non-existent, as the weaponization of religion serves as a tactic to silence any voice of dissent. Radical elements, often operating with the implicit or explicit support of the Pakistani government, have been allowed to target those who demand justice, labeling them as anti-Islamic and traitors. This calculated suppression not only curtails freedom but creates an atmosphere of fear and terror.
These decrees can result in various forms of harassment, physical violence, or even threat to life, particularly when directed as activists challenging the status quo. This development can lead to significant intimidation, fear, and suppression of voices advocating for human rights in the region. Recently, a brave human rights defender, Asma Batul from Hazira, Azad Kashmir, shared a poem on social media that drew the attention of extremist group. As a result, she was arrested by the government under blasphemy charges, putting her life in grave danger. Similarly, Arsalan from Arja Bagh was arrested and detained, and their families are facing harassment and receiving life threats.
Moreover, Pakistan has long been accused of using its occupied territories as breeding grounds for terrorism. Many terrorist outfits operate freely under the shelter of the Pakistani military and intelligence agencies. The people of PoJK and Gilgit-Baltistan have been denied political representation and are governed by puppet administrations, with decisions being dictated from Islamabad. This political subjugation is coupled with enforced demographic changes, where non-local settlers are brought in to alter the region's cultural and political landscape. Such deliberate manipulation is aimed at erasing the distinct identity of these regions and further consolidating Pakistan's illegal control.